I have a very strong connection to the PTA. You may ask, what's the connection, right? So we've talked about commonalities. But I have the fortune of having my better half here today, who happens to be a teacher. So, Alicia, thank you for joining me today. And I think the coolest thing, though, about that is not only is she a teacher, so she kind of keeps me in check all the time, you know. But the coolest thing is that I'll soon be able to join your ranks because in 25 days, I'll be able to be a part of the P in PTA because we're going to be parents for the first time. Anyway, that's the end of my commercial. We have a question. Yes, sir.
Well, first I just wanted to congratulate you. That's wonderful. That's wonderful news. But I also wanted to comment to everyone in the room that teachers are welcoming parent-teacher associations too, and so are students. And if anybody wants to talk about that later, I'll do that offline. But really, it's not just parents.
That's an outstanding point, and we're going to be talking about that in the second half of the presentation. So yes, very good point. Okay, so we've talked about the advocates, we've talked about the occasionals, and then we have the uninvolved, the detractors. Who has those?
I have that little
Do you think McDonald's has any of these groups in the mix? We got a lot. So there's good news and bad news here. Okay, the good news is that this is a small group. The bad news is that your advocates are equally as small as this group. So that's the one thing that we need to understand. So why am I talking about them? The detractors are very important to the PTA. Why? It's important for you to be aware of them, right? You've got to be very aware of this group because they can detract you from the mission of the PTA, right? They can derail the mission of the PTA. So my advice, and this is really something that we take to heart, is most of our attention and focus when it comes to telling the story should be against which of these groups? Can someone tell me? The advocates, the occasionals, or the detractors?
The occasional.
I'm kind of deaf, so I can't hear. The occasionals, because they're the ones that you can influence the most, right? Towards the benefit of the group. I would spend very little time against this group because the detractor is such that they have already made up their mind, regardless of how many facts you put in front of them, regardless of how much influence you want to share with them. So while this is an important group, I would not spend a marketing plan or a PR plan against this group because there's nothing you really can do that's going to change their minds. So be aware of that, because that's very important. Because a lot of times it's like, well, this is the most important group because they're the ones that don't believe. We've got to get them to be believers. You're going to be wasting so much energy, time, and money, in your organization that you're going to burn the advocates in your group. You're going to burn your leadership to the point that you will end up in a worse off position from a membership standpoint than you were in the beginning. So just be aware of that. Okay, so the messaging, right? We've got messaging. That's very important. Why is messaging important? Because that's going to be, your rallying cry to your membership. But also recognize that one message is not really necessarily going to be the one that's going to resonate with everybody, right? So there's got to be, your plan has got to have multiple messages according to your audience, right? And we just talked about the audience. Above and beyond that, what is that message? So many times, and I talked about this earlier, the role of the PTA was, well, we're here to raise funds because our school doesn't have enough instruments and we need to make sure that the kids have the right instrument. That's great, but is that your only message that you're going to send out? No, fundraising is critical and it's foundational to what you do, but there's so many other things that you can tap into to recruit those occasionals, to continue keeping those advocates motivated. So you want to make sure that you have a multiple message strategy to be able to address the needs of the membership. And when we talked about, national or local or statewide, what are your specific needs? That's the screen that you use, right? Because while you have guidelines from a state level, the real impact of the PTA is going to be once you identify what the need is for that specific, school that you have, those are going to drive what the strategy is going to be. That's going to drive what that message is going to be. For us, it's no different. You will see multiple messages from McDonald's depending on the targets that we have. Because if we have one singular message, we're not going to be as effective. So we're talking about being effective here as much as you possibly can to connect, to make that connection. So then there's this little thing called a WIFM. Who knows what a WIFM is? Anyone? Yes, sir. Exactly. What's in it for me? Everyone is driven by what am I going to take out of this, right? So at the end of the day, we talked about the emotional connection, right? We want to make sure that your membership is grounded on, your leadership is grounded on, the recruitment has got to be based on what are we doing that's going to be in it for the members that are going to join us. Saying that you're a member of the PTA, a lot of times is not going to be an incentive that's going to be good enough for them, right? So you've got to go to the need states of people, right? So the what's in it for me can be driven based on, something as simple as incentives. Incentives can drive people that are motivated by, those that are competitive, right? You'll have a lot of, students or parents or teachers that are part of it that want to be competitive. Well, the way for you to keep them motivated is you've got to be competitive. And an incentive can achieve that. We have a lot of incentive programs in our restaurants to incentivize our crew. We've got, and I'll give you an idea in terms of membership, we've got a little over 1 million staffers at McDonald's as a system. But here in Southern California, we've got about 60,000 crew, Beverly? Is that about right? So those are a lot of people that you want to make sure that you keep them engaged and motivated to be giving every person that comes through their door, a very satisfactory experience for them to come back. So an incentive program, with your PTA is important. Consider that, because that's going to really drive the motivation, whether it's, raffles at meetings or, whether it's a trip to, you can get someone to get you a trip to the zoo or a trip to, whatever. The other is recognition. A lot of people, are driven by recognition. That is one of the biggest ways that you can drive the what's in it for me. We all, as human beings, we all want to be recognized, right? We all want to be acknowledged. But how often is it that we're recognized? It's not, it's kind of a common sense thing, but it's not often done. Recognizing someone for their work and their engagement a lot of times can be much more valuable than a cash incentive. Much more valuable than a tangible, gift that you're going to give them. So we'll talk a little bit later about how can you recognize, not only your membership, but also those that you're trying to recruit or others that you're trying to get support from, because this recognition piece is so critical. One of the other things is a sense of community, right? So above incentives, above raffles, above recognition, a lot of us, from a human instinct standpoint, or a human insight, is, I want to have a sense of purpose, right? What's my sense of purpose in life? What's my sense of purpose for being involved in the PTA? So that's directly linked to how is your PTA mission statement directly written so that it's really connecting the dots with what's driving people to be a part of it.